Mayor Tunita Godelay Hiron.
Present.
Councilor David L. Romero.
Here.
Councilor Barbara Casey.
Here.
Councilor Vincent Howell.
Here.
Councilor David A. Ulivetti Jr.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilor Ulivetti, would you do the moment of silence, please?
Moment of silence for all of us, all the people for Las Vegas, for our councilman, our mayor, our city manager, everybody that's here. Keep us in good health for the rest of the year and help us on everything, all the decisions that we make. Amen.
Thank you. Ms. Begos?
The next item on the agenda, Madam Mayor, members of the council, is the approval of the agenda. I have no changes on the agenda.
Okay, what is the pleasure of the council?
Madam Mayor, approval of the agenda is this.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call. Thank you. Councilor Ulivetti?
Councilor Casey.
Yes.
Councilor Romero.
Yes.
Councilor Howell.
Yes.
Councilor Ulivetti Jr.
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Ulivetti Jr., a second by Councilor Howell and Councilor Romero. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, the next item on the agenda is public input. The first one on the agenda is Ms. Rosalie Lopez, and the presentation will be on the refugee resolution. Ms. Lopez?
Mayor and council members, yes, and people in attendance. I'm Rosalie Lopez, and I've lived in Las Vegas area since 1969, so not quite a native, but if I live here another 20 or 30 years, surely that would count. I'm a member of the Mission and Peacemaking Committee for the Presbyterian Church, and this resolution is one that we have started working on months and months and months ago because we thought it was an important aspect. We've done several studies for Mission Peacemaking, and one of them resulted in us getting the homeless shelter. One of them resulted in us having another soup kitchen start. And so we've tried to always do things that we felt were productive for mankind and also for our citizens. And so this resolution is about refugees, not immigrants, just refugees. And it's a simple resolution because it doesn't involve us bringing refugees here at all. It would be nice if we could, but we don't qualify, and it would be hard to get the qualifications. So the resolution that we're talking about would be to help people that are planning to go to Albuquerque and perhaps Santa Fe, if Santa Fe starts having refugees in their area too. And so it's mostly in support, saying yes, we believe that refugees have a right to be here, and yes, we believe that they need to be helped. There are over 21 million refugees worldwide outside their own countries. They fled war, they fled persecution, they fled other things. When my great-grandfather came over many, many years ago, he was just trying to look for better economic things and a better way to raise his family. And so had he not been welcomed, maybe I wouldn't be here either. But he wasn't a refugee from people threatening death or famine or some of the other things. And so we're one of the wealthiest countries in the world. It seems like that we should be able to help other people that are in need. So at one time, we had said that 0.5% would be allowed. The government said that they would be allowed into the United States. And now that figure has been cut in to less than half. We have 4% of the world's population, and it would be nice if we could help support some of the other countries that have refugees that are in their countries and they simply cannot take the flood of them. There are so many, and we're a big country in size, And we have a lot of land and a lot of resources that we could utilize to help these refugees resettle and to give children especially a chance at education and freedom. So I would appreciate it if you could support the resolution and that you could help the other places in New Mexico that are hoping to welcome the refugees into their area. Thank you.
very much, Ms. Lopez.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. The next one on the public input is Mr. John Jeffrey, and he is on the Resolution 18-04. Mr. Jeffrey.
Good
Madam
evening.
Mayor, members of the City Council, friends, John Jeffrey here. I would like to speak in favor of Resolution 1804 in support of refugee resettlement in the United States and in New Mexico. Above all, we have to keep in mind that this resolution is in support of refugee resettlement, mostly in Santa Fe and in Albuquerque. We are not anticipating refugee resettlement in Las Vegas. Las Vegas, for many reasons and in many ways, does not have the resources to support that. However, given a national political climate which is antagonistic towards migrants and refugees, witness the announcement on Monday that temporary protected status for more than 260,000 Salvadorians is to be terminated in 2019, it's important to demonstrate in support of refugee welfare, thus hoping to influence our representatives at the state and national levels. I would like to focus on the role of nonprofit agencies in resettling refugees in New Mexico. Personally, here in Las Vegas, I'm very much involved in social concerns issues with both Catholic parishes, and I note that Catholic Relief Services, which works internationally, and U.S. Catholic Charities are responsible for resettlement of refugees in New Mexico, along with Lutheran Family Services, Episcopal Migrant Ministries, and the Interfaith Leadership Alliance in Santa Fe. The work of these agencies is not done by bleeding heart volunteers, but by trained professionals using donated funds, of course. They are familiar with the reasons people become refugees and, of course, with the problems they face in fitting into life in the U.S. I can't help re-emphasizing how critical the need for support, the need to support legitimate refugees has become during the past year. I've been to El Salvador, and for one, I was astounded by the level of crime and general insecurity faced by the people. I know how desperate many of the people were, who my daughter worked with when she was in the Peace Corps there in the late 1990s. She, in fact, faced physical violence in her own experience. I know that in the years since, life has become more insecure for many people, especially seeing the great increase in gang violence. Really, this is well known. But given the uncertain future which national administration policies point to, I feel we must do all we can to express support for refugees, even if we cannot actually invite them to Las Vegas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Susie Saety on the refuge resolution.
Good evening.
I can't tell you how much I respect the people in the audience here who are fighting for safety, for education, for protection for refugees that are endangered in their own countries. I think that it's vitally important that we as a human race care about them, care about the boys you talked about. I've had dreams about those boys with guns, Councilor Casey, that you said they need to be loved, they need to be playing with trees, climbing trees, not holding guns. I just think that that is huge and it's very important and that everyone here is so well-meaning. I have a personal concern about resettling refugees in New Mexico when we're at the bottom of the list economically and educationally. And I'm not talking about just Las Vegas, I'm saying statewide. economically, educationally, the opioid crisis is hard to say, but it needs our attention, our undivided attention. The homelessness, the veterans who are on the streets. There's so much that we aren't doing now that it concerns me that we're encouraging people to use resources, even the time and energy it takes for a city council meeting to be talking about it. Let's make revolutions, excuse me, let's make a resolution to do something with the people that are walking the streets that don't have a place to go. Let's make a resolution to improve the quality of education for our own kids. And if we have 10 minutes to work on a resolution, let's go tutor an illiterate child who's almost ready to graduate and needs help. There's just so much, there's a limit on the time and energy any of us bring. You are all volunteers doing this job, and I'm grateful for it, and I'm grateful for everybody behind me. I'm just saying this is a question of priorities. This is a question of what deserves our attention right now, and if there's one hungry child in Las Vegas, then why aren't we using our resolution to do something for them? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Ray Herrera on the refugee resolution.
Madam Mayor, council members, ladies and gentlemen, being a Vietnam vet and 9/11 survivor, I couldn't help but look around the room and see how many people did not have the respect for our country to put their hand over their heart. That being said, I'll get to my point. The society pretty much covered what I was going to say about a state that's almost dead last in most every category that feeds economic growth. The priorities of this body are at best misplaced, if not totally distorted. I've lived in a communist country. I fought and bled for this country. What I see happening here and the body of a populace that's in our prisons and where they came from, it hurts quite a bit deep down inside. And I too respect the concerns that this body has for refugees and people that are truly in need. However, New Mexico has long been ignored. People cycle in and out of this body, in and out of this building, giving merely lip service to what's going to be done about it. So I guess my parents took in refugees that were part of the Cuban boat people wave, and also we took in Vietnamese boat people as well. Nobody paid us to do that. We didn't get a dime from the government, because everybody knows you reach out to the government, there's strings attached. And show me one thing that the government has done that they've done right. That's very troubling. So who would pay for all this, and where's all this money coming from? Yes, some people would volunteer.
Excuse me, sir?
Take people in.
You have to address the council.
They don't count.
They do count, but you're
Okay.
addressing the council.
So I'll speak up a little bit. So who's going to pay for that? I personally did not fight for my money to go to that cause. And having contributed to a couple of refugee families ourselves, it's not like I'm speaking out of turn here. Our priorities are, like I said, misplaced, if not totally distorted. So who in here is going to be the first family to say, I'll take in a family into my own home? Okay, you talk about do-gooders and all that sort of stuff. Where are they when it comes right down to it? Come on. We are New Mexico for New Mexicans. And I'm sorry that they're having such a tough time over there. But we came here not speaking English. We learned how to speak English by watching cartoons on a black and white TV. We all went on to be college educated. Nobody handed us a thing. Get your priorities straight. Get your priorities straight. Because I see people, like the society said, walk in the street. And if anybody needs our help, they do. first and foremost.
Thank you, Mr. Rizzo.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Jonathan Zhang.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Councilmen, people of the audience. I'm Jonathan Zane. I am a student at UWC USA, and I'm in my first year. I'm originally from Michigan, but my parents were actually asylum seekers from China back in the 1960s. They were granted status as political refugees, and if it wasn't for the policies of the United States, I wouldn't even be here today. I am in complete support of the resolution, and even today, there are refugees in my school, some of them from Sudan, and some of them from elsewhere. Today, this year, we were supposed to get 2 Syrian refugees to come to our school, but because of Donald Trump's executive order and travel ban, they are unable to come, and we have students from these countries with the ban placed on that have not returned home for over a year and a half because the moment they leave, they are not able to come back. This is not the first refugees crisis we've seen, and this will definitely not be the last. As they said, if we fail to learn from history, it will be bound to repeat itself. The United States is a country born from people seeking a different life, escaping persecution, and finding freedom. And I hold these values to the center of my heart. And even if we cannot contribute much, this resolution is more symbolic than nothing. But no matter, even if it's just a penny that we can contribute, we should contribute it. Because when we first came to this country, we had nothing. That they could have turned us away at the border, but they didn't, and they allowed us in. Especially in New Mexico, where a lot of the population itself is not are immigrants itself. We need to remember that we need to help the other people as well. And so I just hope that we can also inspire other cities to pass the same exact resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have John Shetty.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and audience. I'm John Sheedy. I'm a faculty member at the United World College. I've been out there for 6 years. I grew up here in the Southwest. I'm proud to be both in a territory that I call home and also have the opportunity to work with international students. I have learned so much from them about not only appreciating my country and the rich fabric and history that immigrants and refugees have contributed in the past, but I've also learned the importance of breaking down walls and finding solutions through community building and finding and overcoming our fears. I'm also representing Victoria Mora, who's president of UWC. So if I could have just a minute, I have a letter that she sent in on her behalf. So this is from Victoria Mora. Dear Mayor and council members, I'm writing in support of a resolution under consideration that would allow refugees to settle in Las Vegas, New Mexico. The United States has been a long-time safe haven for people fleeing violence, tyranny, and persecution. Welcoming refugees is a life-saving humanitarian gesture. Then a war crisis uproots people. Refugee resettlement can also enrich our economy and enhance our national security. Coming to the United States as a refugee is no easy task. The Department of Homeland Security handpicks every refugee for resettlement. Refugees are screened by security agencies, a process that can take up to 3 years. Hundreds of communities across America have welcomed refugees with open arms. Thousands of volunteers in church and community groups help these newcomers adapt to our way of life. The number of Americans volunteering to assist refugees exceeds numbers of refugees arriving. As president of the United World College USA in Montezuma, where we have 222 students from 94 countries this year, I've witnessed firsthand the benefits of an international community. In addition, many of our students have getaway families in Las Vegas. Year after year, these families invite students to their homes because of the power of cultural exchange and a richness that comes from encountering and understanding one another. The mission for the 17 United World College campuses worldwide is to make education a force to unite people, nations, and cultures for peace and a sustainable future. It's a mission I believe in, and a mission that can be extended to the Las Vegas community, its benefits, and to the benefit of the refugees. Respectfully yours, Dr. Victoria Moore.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have, and I apologize, Abdulrahman Reyes. And I hope I didn't chop it up too much.
Good evening.
Good evening, dear council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. My name is Abdulrahman Reyes. I'm from Iraq. I'm not here to push this resolution in any direction, but I'm here because I think that's a decision for the people of Las Vegas. But I'm here to share my own experience and the experience of my city, who was in a very similar situation in 2011. In 2011, we had a barbaric group called ISIS who attacked and took over large territories in Syria and Iraq, displacing thousands of people. And my city, called Erbil, is not an economically developed city, not a politically developed city, yet we were at a time of crisis. There were people at our border asking to come in, and we did not have the resources to feed them, to give them jobs, to do any of that. And I feel like some of the people in the audience have similar concerns. And I think that the people of my city, of Erbil, reached the conclusion that this time of crisis was a time to question our own humanity. Are we going to let those people die on the border, or are we going to let them in? And what we decided to do was let them in. And what I saw every day, going to school and back, I saw people living in abandoned houses, in tents on the streets, and on the streets, literally. And they didn't even have the money to eat. My mom would always cook extra food, and we would give it to any family that was nearby. And they were still grateful for it. They were still grateful that they were safe, that their children were not being slaughtered, that the women were not being used as sex slaves. They were still grateful for being at our streets. And a lot of them are hardworking people. My best friend is a refugee. And he came in, he lost his grandparents in the Syrian civil war. He came in, his dad started a factory in my city, and now they're doing very well. And so refugees do not need our pity, they need our protection. So this is a time of crisis, and I understand it's a hard decision for everyone. But I think a time of crisis is important. It is important to talk about this. I'm proud of this town to be talking about this, even with the limited resources they have. Because when we say 1 million refugees, it's easy to say 1 million, but that's 1 million stories. That's 1 million individuals. And when you get to see them, when you get to hear the stories, you get attached to this whole topic on a whole new level. And just knowing that they can be saved with the resolutions that you make will...
Continue. Please finish. We'll give you an extra.
Just knowing that resolutions that you make, sitting safely, can save families that are living in the cold. It's the month of December now. Families are living in tents where it's cold, where they don't have clothes or heating. Just knowing that they can be somewhere safe and warm will change your whole view on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Carol Pearson on the refugee resolution.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, friends, that is a hard act to follow. I wanted you to put your imagination in the place of one of the people that our friend there was talking about. I invite you to imagine that you are a woman, you are a trained elementary school teacher, your husband is a car mechanic, a skilled one. You have 2 daughters, age 9 and 11, you live somewhere in the Middle East. Factions in your country are deeply opposed, striving to control the government. The situation becomes worse and worse, and violence breaks out. Foreign countries from overseas get involved in your struggle. Your school, where you teach, closes. Your husband goes out one day to work. He never comes back. You do not know why. Law and order in your town ceases to exist. Your family urges you, begs you to take your 2 girls and go over the border. You pack one bag that you can carry. Each child also carries a bag. You leave at night and you walk. You join many other people. You travel only by night because that is the safest time to travel. You cross the border and you find yourself in a large tent city. Neighboring countries, the neighboring country where you have landed tries to organize this big influx, but it's very hard for them because they are not a wealthy country and they are overwhelmed by the numbers of people fleeing. You receive very basic rations. There is no possibility of schooling for your daughters. You are listed. You have your name listed and the name of your children listed by the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. At least you are known. But you cannot leave the camp. You cannot work. You cannot support your family. Officials from various nations come by day after day and talk to you. They vet you. They want to know if you are telling the truth, if your story is really true. Many of these people come from the United States. Many United States agencies come to ask you questions. You have something in your favor. You have a modicum of English. You know a little English. That is helped. And the America will consider you. I have a tiny bit more. Can I go on?
Okay, continue, yes, please.
Yeah. A year goes by. Freezing winter, hot summer. You are still there. A second year goes by. You are still there. The children have no formal education. Violence rages at home. There's no way you can return. You learn that the United States is halting admittance of refugees from your country. Your hopes are dashed. They are dashed again and again. Yet countries of the world have agreed in the past to resettle people like you who are the most vulnerable amongst the refugees. What has happened to these solemn promises that this country made and many other countries made? You learn of a few places in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and a possibility of places in Santa Fe. Hope returns. These are the sort of people that we are talking about here. This simple resolution, which you have to consider, is a resolution of thanks and support for the representatives of the people of our Albuquerque and Santa Fe, and to our federal representatives, saying that we in Las Vegas recognize the need for the nation to take its fair share of resettling people who we have examined over and over again to make sure that they can be welcomed safely in our country. Who in this room,
Ma'am,
can you stand up if you support the idea of this resolution?
you need to address the council, ma'am.
Oh, I'm asking the audience to show you that there are people in this room who support this idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Bob Pearson.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I'm also here as a member of Amnesty International and the Mission and Peacemaking Committee of the Presbyterian Church, both of which have been working for a year on this resolution. You have heard arguments in favor of the resolution, some against. I'm going to deal with some of the arguments against the resolution. First of all, is the idea that refugees may be a danger to the community. The criminal records of refugees are less than that of native-born Americans. They are more law-abiding than the rest of us are. 800,000 refugees have been taken in since 1980. Not a single one of them has ever murdered an American resident as in an act of terror. There's a fear that perhaps terrorists will sneak in as part of this process. That is what the vetting process is meant to avoid. It is very careful, it is very thorough. No one will get in who has evil intentions. Another possibility which has been raised is the possible economic burden. When a refugee is approved for entry into this country, he or she has to promise to pay back the airfare within 6 months. Most of them are able to do it. In the long term, refugees make a positive contribution to the economic situation of the country and the community in which they live. They return more money to the federal and state government in their taxes than they receive in benefits. So they are not an economic burden. The initial costs of education, placement, and so forth are borne by federal and state and volunteer agencies, with much of this money donated. There's sometimes the charge that refugees do not integrate into the society. This is false. There is no evidence that this is in fact the case. But a report by the Pew Research Institute about 10 years ago said that Muslim Americans were highly integrated into American society. So this should not be a fear. They will be, in a sense, the best among us. So you've heard arguments in favor of the resolution. I hope I have showed you that most of the arguments against refugee resettlement are not based on fact or experience. So what will be our resolution? Almost. What will be the reaction of America to this refugee crisis situation? Will we continue to do, as we have done for so many years, meet this crisis with generosity and welcome, or will we, in fear, turn our backs on people who are most in need? Please remember that I showed you in a previous session the results of the penny poll at the People's Fair, where 85% of the participants said that refugees should be resettled in American cities. Over 14 cities have already passed welcoming resolutions, and many more will do so in the coming months. It's on the schedule. So let us support those cities, show our support for those cities which are able and willing to accept refugees. Let us stand for human rights. Let us stand on the right side of history. Let us pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Finally, we have I think it's Miss Pat Lahan.
Hi, I'm Pat, Las Vegas. Thank you. There's this young writer for the Washington Post, and her name is Molly Roberts. And she's pretty good. She'll get more seasoned the more she writes, but she does op-ed pieces for the Washington Post. And she published a piece on January 5th of this year. Happy New Year, by the way. And it was great. One sentence really jumped out at me, and it jumped out at me so strongly that I decided I'm going to make it my New Year's resolution. And the sentence is, we all need to take a deep breath, do the opposite of the president, and think. And so if you all want to take on that resolution for yourselves, then I know you will take a deep breath, you will do the opposite of the president, you will use your minds, connect with your hearts, and you will pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, we're ready to move on to discussion items.
Okay, Mr. Silva, or not yet? Okay, I've got you. Okay.
The first item on the agenda is Resolution 17-46, confirming DFA adjustment of $666. And we have Ms. Darlene Martinez, Senior General Accountant, for presentation.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Madam Mayor.
Good evening.
Members of council.
Have a seat, please.
I'll pull the chair out. DFA increased the 112th cash reserve requirement by $666. So we are requesting that mayor and council confirm the update as recommended by DFA.
What is the pleasure of the council? Questions, comments?
Just a logistical question. The copy that was given to us in our packet shows the increase handwritten into the resolution that we passed last month in December. Well, this says confirming DFA adjustment. So are we confirming that handwritten little piece there, or are we going to amend the resolution to include the $666, or how is that done?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Councilor Casey, that was handwritten by Paul Ludi, who is our DFA analyst,
Yeah.
and he is the one who is requesting that we increase the 112. We're increasing our revenues by $666 to so that we may be able to be in compliance with the 112 cash requirement. Does that answer your question?
No, it doesn't. No.
What?
I understand what Paul did.
Yes.
But what I'm asking is, are we just going to, I mean, this resolution was passed
Yes.
a month ago.
Yes, ma'am.
And so are we going to amend this resolution? Is that what we're doing tonight, next week? Or are we just going to, send this back to Paul and say it's okay by the council? That's what I'm asking.
Yes, we would send it back to Mr. Ludi. Once you confirm it, and that would be next week, we would send it back to him with the minutes confirming the change on 17-46.
Okay, so just pardon my saying this, but I think DFA does a little bit of sloppy work if that's what they want us to do. But it's not anything that you did or that the city is doing, but you would think the DFA would be a little bit more professional than just writing it in and then saying, okay, that was my concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is just supporting documentation, correct?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Okay, what is the pleasure of the
Thank you,
council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Gallegos.
Oh.
That's okay. it's probably going to be to you. In the third whereas, could you give us an explanation on the increases and decreases? For example, increase of $8,000 grant funding for the general fund and so on.
You want me to give you an explanation?
Yeah, why is there an increase?
The $8,000 was the U.S. Marshal grant on behalf of the police department.
And is that the general fund one?
Yes, and that's exactly the one that sent this over the 112 cash requirement. Yes.
And what about the 7,500?
The 7,599 was the library special fund. That was bonds that were that have been was an application that was submitted by the library, and so they awarded us $7,599 in bond fund money. The decrease of 21,500 was a decrease in the E911 system that was brought to mayor and council in December, and they had an adjustment on. We had brought in the total grant amount, and they decreased their grant, so we had to show that decrease on their grant as well. A decrease of $406 in the Bulletproof Vest. They were awarded $406 less. And then there was an increase in the airport fund of $9,978 that we also requested for an increase, and then an increase of $1,895,000 of SRF funding in the water project fund.
Okay, that's one. Thank you.
Would it help the council if you did a transfer in, transfer out report that indicated each specific line item that has to be transferred in and out? Would that help the council?
Madam Mayor, I believe that we did get that last month with this resolution.
Okay, but I know we did.
Yes.
But maybe in the future you should attach attach it again.
I will.
For the purposes of the council.
For further information. I'll be glad to do that, Madam Mayor, members of the council.
Madam Mayor. Of course. I just thought it was something different.
Absolutely not. It was the same. It was the same. And then, of course, we increased the general fund miscellaneous revenue by $666 to take care of the requirement.
Okay, any other questions? What is the pleasure of the council? Consent?
Consent.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The next item on the agenda is resolution number 18-04 in support of the refugee resettlement in the United States and in New Mexico and creating an advisory board. We have Mr. David Silva, City Attorney.
Mr. Silva? Yes, please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I've reviewed Resolution 1804, and I believe it is legally sufficient to be approved and adopted. I also believe that it should be read, and with permission from the mayor, I'd like Fatima Gutierrez Street.
Yes, I would, and I want to thank you for catching the actual date that was done by this administrative staff, so I apologize for that.
And if she may read it?
Yes, the date will be changed for next week. Thank you very much. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So Resolution 18-04, Las Vegas, New Mexico resolution in support of refugee resettlement in the United States and in New Mexico. Whereas the world is facing the largest refugee crisis since World War II, with over 22 million refugees, 86% of whom are hosted by low and middle income countries, which do not have the resources to adequately support such large numbers. Whereas the term refugee refers to any person who is outside the country of origin and has a well-founded fear of being persecuted should he or she return. Whereas 51% of refugees are children, 60% of whom have no access to education. Whereas those officially designated as refugees are registered with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Whereas the UNHCR has determined that 1,100,000 refugees are in need of immediate resettlement due to a heightened vulnerability to further harm, but less than 200,000 resettlement places have been pledged by nations. Whereas refugees in most urgent need of resettlement are identified based on their vulnerabilities and risk of further exposure to violence and exploitation, including children traveling alone, female-headed households, victims of torture, the physically disabled, and members of the LGBT community. Whereas President Obama committed to taking a total of 110,000 refugees in 2017, including the 10,000 places for the most vulnerable refugees. Whereas President Trump in his March 6, 2017 executive order reduced the number of refugees to be resettled in 2017 to 50,000. Whereas President Trump has further reduced the number of refugees to be resettled in 2018 to 45,000, the lowest number in history. Whereas the 3 successive travel bans imposed by President Trump and legal challenges to them at present leave the current and future members of refugees allowed to enter the U.S. in great uncertainty. Whereas, despite the White House policies, the Refugee Resettlement Program enjoys bipartisan support in Congress. Whereas, our 3 federal legislators all have co-sponsored legislation which would nullify the executive order of March 6, 2017. Whereas, we commend the United States for having resettled nearly 800,000 refugees since 2001, but note the ability of and need of our country to do more. Whereas, since 2011, 189 refugees have been resettled in New Mexico. Whereas, refugees represent diverse faiths, including Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, and Buddhists. Whereas, the process for admitting refugees involves screening by the UNHCR and then vetting a process by multiple U.S. security and intelligence agencies, lasting 18 to 24 months, before the candidate can enter the country, with a substantial number of candidates being rejected. Whereas the agencies officially responsible for resettlement in New Mexico are Catholic Charities and Lutheran Family Services in Albuquerque, and the Interfaith Leadership Alliance in Santa Fe hope to initiate the resettlement of refugees in Santa Fe, where the refugee settlement program is fully resumed. Whereas an unreleased study by the Department of Health and Human Services shows that for the decade ending in 2014, refugees contributed $63 billion more to the government revenues than they cost the federal government. Whereas since 1980, no refugee has killed a U.S. resident in an act of terrorism. Whereas communities across the nation have experienced positive economic impacts as a result of welcoming and resettling refugees. These impacts are the result of the goods and services produced by the refugee workers, refugee-owned businesses, and spending and jobs created by refugee settlement agencies. Whereas, although many refugees settling in the United States initially depend on public benefits, most quickly become self-sufficient. Benefits usage declines with length of residence and median incomes of refugees who arrive 10 to 20 years earlier or higher than their U.S. foreign counterparts. Now therefore be it resolved that the governing body declares its support for those cities in New Mexico which are able to resettle refugees, and calls for a greater national effort to provide a safe and secure future for refugees. Be it further resolved that the city clerk shall forward copies of this resolution to New Mexico's 5 federal legislators, its governor, and the mayors of Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Resolved in this session, this 10th day of January, 2018.
Thank you very much. Councilor Howell.
Yes.
What is the other question?
Oh, okay. Sorry. This resolution is it's dear to my heart, and I know this resolution came up before in front of us, and I truly made a big mistake last time. And I want to tell you a story also, is that we had a international student stay with us, and she was telling us a story about her grandparents who came from North Korea. And North Korea was being very abusive to their residents, to their citizens. And they moved the grandparents to Uzbekistan. And they were in an internment camp. And after they got out of the internment camp, they lived a fruitful life in Uzbekistan at that time. And one became a doctor, one became a nurse, the wife became a nurse, and they created a family and so on. And I do agree that refugees that come here will help our economy, help our social aspect of our lives here. And I listened to Ms. Saity and Mr. Herrera, and I strongly feel that we really, like you said, don't have the resources to have refugees here in Las Vegas. And I understand this resolution does not state that we in Las Vegas will accept refugees. And I think Ms. Rosalie Lopez said that we are not qualified to be a refugee city. Pardon me? Sanctuary. So we're not qualified for that. The one concern I have about this resolution is that the wordings of we declare its support. I need to ask a question is declaring support or being supportive, is that different?
I don't believe there's a difference in the way you just phrased it.
Okay, because the way I was thinking is that, okay, if we are declaring support, does that mean that we will provide resources to the thing?
No. I don't read it that way.
Okay, well that was my
special attention to that paragraph you're referring to.
Okay, I wanted to get that clarified in my mind. Thank you. And I think that of course, I'm an immigrant, and I've lived in the United States, and I've flourished in the United States. And I've seen my friends throughout the 67 years that I've lived, throughout my time in Oakland and in Las Vegas. And we've lived near refugee families that lived in Oakland. And they are flourishing also in Oakland. They own businesses throughout the main corridor of East 14th Street, I should say. It's called International Boulevard now. But they own businesses and they're flourishing, and their families, their kids are now flourishing. So I really believe that they can be a great asset. I think that the cities that are accepting refugees, they have to really look at how they are taking care of their own. Just like we in Las Vegas. There was a comment made last time this issue came up that we in Las Vegas are not taking care of our own citizens. And I did not respond to that for a long time, for whatever reason it was. But I do want to respond to it now. I think that we as a governmental entity should really focus our agendas for our governing body to really focus on how we can help the homeless, help the joblessness we have in our community, how we can bring jobs here, and how we can, and we should have a major discussion, and not just between our governing body, but between our citizens. Our citizens need to be involved in those conversations. And we need to really have the agendas focus on those type of things. And I think the other cities that are accepting refugees also should look at their agendas and how they are protecting their citizens, because there's two separate issues, bringing in refugees and helping them grow into our community or assimilate into our community, and also how we can take care of our own citizens. And Ms. Saity said there's homelessness, there's joblessness, There's veterans that are living on the streets. And what are we doing with those? Let's have those discussions. Let's have those on our agendas. And I think that we will let our citizens know that we are taking care of them. And at the same time, we can support or lend support or declare support to the other cities that are accepting refugees. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but just a comment. Okay. There are a lot of things that we need to consider, and as Councillor Howell stated, he stated that he should have voted for it before. And I would like to say that I should have voted for it before, because I really feel that the prior resolution that we had was much better than this one. I really believe that, because this is, to me, and this is my personal opinion, is not as strong as the prior resolution. And for that, I am sorry that I did not vote for it at that time. We have so many needs in Las Vegas. And I know that people say, oh, there aren't any homeless people here. Drive down Romero Street. Drive down Keene Street. Across the street from Lowe's on Mills, there are homeless people living there next to a tree and the little wall that's there. There are school-aged children living in empty houses on Keene Street, on Romero Street. Those are things that we really have to pay attention to. If you drive through some of the streets, Pecos, Railroad, Commerce, a lot of those homes are substandard homes. People are living in them. We need to take care of those people. We need to take care of the people that come to our community kitchens to make sure that they have something to eat. Those are all things that we need to take care of. And I am distressed, very distressed with President Trump and his wanting to send back Salvadorans. I witnessed firsthand what was going on there, and the pictures that I saw in the news this week show that the same thing is still going on. It hasn't changed a bit. You see schoolgirls that are terrified with a soldier standing there searching people. I had never in my life seen a machete that was actually bigger than the person that was carrying it until I went to El Salvador. And so there are many things that we need to consider. The resolution is merely welcoming and supporting other communities that can handle bringing in refugees. And so I really feel that we need to do both. We need to take care of our own people. We need to take care of the people that live in our community, in our neighborhoods. We need to take care of people that desperately need help. We have a lot of veterans with PTSD. We have people who, and I didn't know this, but when people are released from the Behavioral Health Institute here, and they have no family here in Las Vegas that can take care of them, they are loaded on a bus, driven to Albuquerque, and when they get to Albuquerque, they're just dropped off at the bus depot, and that's it. Find a place to live on the streets, whatever you do. Sorry, we don't know. Just come. And we can't be doing that. We need to be a little bit more responsible. We need to be more human than what we're doing. And think that we need to make sure that we take care of people here, as well as people that need help and support from other places as well. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Questions? Okay. With regard to the resettlement, I believe that the attorneys did a good job with reviewing the resolution, and I also believe that the input did come from the individuals who, of course, who went ahead and introduced the resolution. So I do want to commend you, Mr. Silva, for the work that you did. Thank you very much. With regards to the economic development issues here in the city just passed and approved, the governing body, 800 acre-feet of storage for hopefully future moderate growth for the citizens and the city of Las Vegas. I think that's a definite positive step in the right direction. The issue of homelessness continues to be addressed. We work with Samaritan House. We continue to work with Samaritan House. And we're hopeful that there are other shelters that come in. I know that I'm working on a grant and have been for a few months now with regards to a battered women's shelter. And I hope to see fruition in that as well. With regards to the issue of enforcement on certain streets in the most dilapidated areas of the community, there was an ordinance that came to the council, and as discussed, I felt that the ordinance was a little too strong and that might actually negatively impact individuals who possibly don't have the money to be able to fix their dilapidated homes and might have put them, either displaced them or had to be been relocated. The city doesn't have the funds at this point in time to do that. And most of the relocation displacements occur through or public housing, which is federal dollars that need to be used, and it must be justified. So I think that the city is doing a good job with moving a lot of the issues forward. And we will continue to work to move issues forward and do our best with regards to improving the services to the citizens of this community. That is what we should be doing. We don't have a lot of jobs coming in, we don't have a lot to offer, and considering the rate hikes that were imposed, I believe that we need to provide a constant and good service to the citizens of this community. So I do want to thank you both and all of you involved today with the resettlement resolution. I'm hopeful that this would be a positive resolution in the right direction. Listening to everybody out there, it touches your heart and soul to see that there's so many people in need with so many little resources. And we're doing what we can with what we have. So I'm very thankful for each and every one of you and your input here today. Now I have to put this resolution to the council, and I will ask them what the pleasure of the council is at this point in time.
I would like to see it as a consent agenda.
Okay. Councilor?
Yes. I do.
Okay. It is, will be as a consent agenda for the regular meeting, which will be next week. What that means is that doesn't mean that we cannot pull it from the consent agenda if questions arise. I have to be completely honest as to the process, okay? But right now, it looks like it is a consent agenda item. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, before we continue, this so closely ties into the actual resolution, and I have to make that announcement now. During the holiday season, I must say that we had a counselor here who really went out of his way to provide food, turkey to the needy individuals within this community. I think he put out like 25 turkeys, food, and it's a constant. He's always helping the senior citizens. And I want to thank this counselor here today for his continued contribution and commitment to the people. Counselor David Olivari, thank you very much for your contribution to the people. Okay, so it is a consent agenda item. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next item. Thank you very much, Mr. Silva.
I'm sorry. The next item on the agenda, Madam Mayor, members of the council, is the Open Meetings Resolution 18-01. We have Ms. Cassandra Frescas, City Clerk.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Every year in January, we bring forth the resolution for the Open Meetings Act, and this is Resolution 18-01. And this resolution establishes reasonable notice of council meetings in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, and approval of the resolution is required annually. So I bring it forth to you. And I sent an email out to all of our directors to see if there was any changes to any of the committees that were listed here, any of the boards, committees, including advisory committees. And we only had a couple of changes. And we had our Police Advisory Commission that meets, and this is on page 3, that meets every third Thursday of the month. There was a change on the time to 3 o'clock. Okay, that was the only change that I received. However, this morning I did receive a call from the Charter Commission, and they want to change their meeting, and this would be from the second Thursday of the month. They're wanting to switch it to the first Thursday of the month at 1:30. They were having a problem meeting in the evening, so they...
At 1:30 versus 5:30?
Correct. So they wanted to change it to an earlier date.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Questions?
The notice that we have before us says first Tuesday of the month, so
Tuesday.
they're also changing the day?
Correct.
Okay, so...
And I just got that call this morning, so
Okay, so
we
for
can
the
make that...
Thursdays at...
First Thursday at 1:30. And everything else on the resolution remains the same, and I'll stand for any questions.
And all those changes will be reflected accordingly.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Questions?
Madam Mayor, thank you. Ms. Frescas and Ms. Gallegos. The only comment that I have on this is, and I've received many calls on this issue. They are commenting that we do not show all of our council meetings that are open to the public on the TV channel. And I checked into Mr. Sean Weaver. He said that all we have to do is to give him a call and let him know that we want this shown, and he can flip the switch. And on the city side, I was told there's a memorandum that we can only show the one council meeting a month. And I don't know if that's, I've never seen that memo, or we were never involved in developing that policy.
I'm not sure if it's a policy, it's a contract.
Yeah,
Memorandum is a contract?
It's a contract that we have on a yearly basis with Highlands. And
They-
the contract states that we have 2 meetings, the work session and the regular meeting.
Okay.
So, however, as you stated, if we request it early enough, is what I found out, and they're going to be there at the school during our special meeting that you might call, then if we request that in advance, then they can make arrangements for that.
And what is the cost associated with that?
There would be no cost.
Okay, that was a question.
And on the Highland side, they say we don't have a contract, we just have an MOU. And I don't understand
Well, you don't, okay, an MOU and a contract are different. One is more binding than the other essentially. But that is an administrative decision and an administrative function.
But the residents of this community is asking us to show every council meeting that's open to the public. And it has not been that way.
And if that's the wish of the council, we can request that from the university to do that as long.
So you're talking about special meetings, emergency meetings?
As long as it's open to the public.
Exactly.
Not the closed
No
meetings.
closings.
Yeah. I think that,
Okay, well, if you're referring to the last 2 meetings, we had an emergency with regards to the special meeting and then another back-to-back special meeting with regards to the story project. So I think that we probably would not have met that deadline anyway, correct?
Right. We tried calling Highlands and they did not answer.
Right.
So we were not able to do that. I think they were on break, if I'm not mistaken.
were both those meetings open meetings?
Yes. Correct.
Yes.
And they were advertised?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Because a lot of our residents did not know. I'm just letting you know that, that's all.
They were on the website and posted.
Yes, Counselor Howell, what happens is we have one that is at the last minute, so to speak. We must follow our resolution, and that requires it 72 hours. So we post
Sure.
notice on the website, we post notice on the door, and we send PSAs out to all of our radio stations.
Then what's the status of the emergency meetings, if we have this?
If
We
we
can't
have
meet
an
the 72
no,
hours.
if we have an emergency meeting, then it's the 24 hours.
24 hours, okay. And I think you asked the question if the governing body is wanting to do that. I think I'd like to hear from the governing body.
I have constituents that call me all the time and say, why wasn't it shown? Because that's the only, they're older and they don't like to drive at night, or they're disabled and can't or whatever, and it's difficult for them to get here. But they still want to know what's going on, so it would be nice if it was televised and available.
That's the wish of the mayor and council.
Those are the wishes of the mayor and council. Then we can certainly amend that MOU and also request that special meetings be televised as well. And if those are the wishes of the council.
Okay. Councilor Lee?
No comments.
Okay, we'll look into it.
Okay. And we'll,
Thank you very much.
So how do we make that, is it going to be a consent agenda with this, if we do it, and with that
I don't
request be
I don't believe we need
incorporated?
to add that. That's going to have to be amended. The MOU and the contract would have
Correct.
to be amended
So we
first.
will do that on
We
our
can't
end.
proceed with that until the amendment of the MOU and the contract. And then at that point in time, I'm certain, hopefully by next week, next Wednesday, they'll have an answer for us and make all the amended recommendations and changes to the
Correct,
actual.
and we'll do that administratively.
And it would be good if the council gets a copy of that.
Well, of course.
Please.
Certainly.
Thank you very much. Okay. What is, so consent?
We'll make that.
Okay, if you have questions, you can pull that out.
So we'll make that change on the resolution?
No, not on the resolution, on the MOU.
On the MOU. And then there is some, our IT staff is working towards bringing that in-house. And so once we bring that in-house, we won't have to have that contract with Highlands University. And so what we'll be doing is we'll leave that third party out and advertise and televise those meetings as well.
Very good.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I don't know if this is the right venue to bring up this discussion, but the 3-minute public input timeframe, does that happen during the organizational meeting where we can discuss that?
That is also the wishes of the council. So when the organizational meeting happens, we can discuss that.
Okay, so that's when we,
Yes.
okay, that's what
Exactly.
I really would like to have that discussion.
Yes, that's when we can make all the necessary changes.
Okay.
And may I add to that, please? Just so that everyone knows that the Open Meetings Act does not address public input in the act itself.
Exactly.
And so it would be nice if we had more time for people, but in general, governing bodies of different types in the state will allow public input, and that's, it's not required, but it is something that,
It's a
governing
privilege.
bodies do because it's the right thing to do. Yeah. Just to clarify.
Yeah, and 3 minutes is good so far. There's some that go 2 minutes.
Yeah, but I think that if we have 50 people out there.
We allow them, Councillor Howell, to speak. I don't believe that we've ever come to the point, unless they're being inappropriate during a meeting, that we don't allow them to speak. And I think that's pretty evident, because they'll give us the time and I let them finish.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's become a problem, is what I'm saying.
No, I'm just making a point of that if there's 50 people out there that's going to speak on the same item or same issue, then we should let the people know out there that we will allow so many people to speak on the same issue.
that is a violation of their right, constitutional rights to speak. If they sign up for public input and we open it up, we cannot go ahead and say, no, we're going to allow you one person.
No, I'm not saying one person.
Well, or two or three people. If they all want to speak, but if they want to go ahead and give their time to the next person to speak, then that's fine.
Because I remember we had that
Yes, we
issue with
did.
that water, or no,
Exactly.
the community,
Mhm.
what do you call it?
And a lot of them went ahead and gave up their time to the next person. That's fine, we can accept that.
Okay, as long as we're.
Yes, we're very flexible. Okay. Okay, any other questions? Sí, señor.
I want to ask a question to either the city manager or the director of the city.
Okay.
Because there's a constituent that asked me, what were the vehicles doing from 6:30, 7:30, 8:30, right there on Lincoln Avenue,
In the morning or in the evening?
and the night?
Okay, what city vehicles?
That some of them are police department, some of them are the gas department, the truck,
Okay, maybe do they live out there? I think some of them
or
live out there.
what were they doing there without no notice to us?
And
when did this happen?
On Lincoln Park?
Right there by where the optic used to be?
Yes.
There's a shop right there.
Okay, when did this happen?
Just a minute.
I guess it was Monday.
And a lot of
Monday.
vehicles were there?
Yeah.
Wait, just a minute. Madam Mayor?
Let me.
Madam Mayor, councilors, strike out the company who's doing the hail damage repair on the city vehicles that's where they're working out of.
From Strikeout?
Yes, that's the name of the company that's doing the repairs on the city vehicles for hail damage.
Did those jobs invented that were more than what they're supposed to pay for, that should have gone through us?
I wouldn't be able to answer that. I believe our risk management is handling that.
Oh, yes, okay, I got you.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Let me have Anne Marie answer that one. That's through the fund.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, that was through the New Mexico Self-Insurance Fund. They have come in and taken inventory of all of our vehicles. They have contracted with, I believe it's 2 to 3 companies here in town. And so we are rotating them. The vehicles that were pretty bad, which was police department vehicles, they have been taking care of those. I don't know, they've also taken vehicles from other departments. We had nothing, we're not the payees at all. They're not sending the money to the city. They are taking care of the vehicles with the costs and everything else that are associated with them through the New Mexico Self-Insurance Fund. The same as the roofing projects are the same.
The guys that work on it are working at night?
They have worked quite a few,
Because after 9
and
o'clock,
weekends
they
as
went
well.
there.
Well, they have been working, they've been working on them during the day and then as well as at night. There is so many vehicles, and I forget the number, I can get it for you, but we have quite a few vehicles throughout the city that we own that have very bad and damaged vehicles with the hail damage.
But see, David, the city is not handling it.
But we're
It's the
not.
state fund. who's
But
handling
doesn't it should have notice it to us that your vehicles are out there?
Well,
That's what.
we did give you notice in executive session, David. I can't discuss it here, but notice was given in executive session to everybody about how the fund was going to handle that. And that's where it was discussed. I can't discuss anymore at this point.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I want to state here today that today was the senior day at the legislature, and I would like to thank our senators and representatives for their continued support of senior citizen services. I also want to state that the senior citizen services have been cut dramatically in the state, and we have to come together as a community to see how we can provide services, food, things of this nature that have been cut quite drastically. So for those of you who are here, please go to your senior citizens, have a meal, have a cup of coffee. It could be. All of that is good and very helpful. And thank you, Wanda, for being here. You're doing an outstanding job, and each and every one of the directors who's here. Thank you for your hard work and commitment. We're so fortunate to have each and every one of you. Thank you very much. Okay, any other questions? No need for executive, I gather, I hope. When? Need a motion for adjournment?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Second.
Roll call.
Counselor Olivari Jr.?
Yes.
Counselor Howell?
Yes.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Casey, a second by Counselor Howell. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you,